was I talking about that again? I don't. Well, it stinks. Hold on. That's not the video. Sorry to give you a false impression. I'm just trying to be fun. So let me give a proper introduction. Welcome again to the second installment in this trilogy of videos honoring the Twilight Zone. This is our TwilightTober series honoring the memory of the Twilight Zone and Rod Serling in the month of October. And now we come to part 2 in our series, which is me talking about the Twilight Zone film, which was named Twilight Zone the movie, and it came out in 1983. And this was a movie that was more or less honoring the original series, and it was comprised of actually 4 stories. One was an introduction, which was written and directed by John Landis. The first segment was actually directed by John Landis, an original story idea. The second one was a remake of the episode Kick the Can. The third one was a remake of It's a Good Life. And the fourth one was a remake of 20,000 feet. Wait, Nightmare at 20,000 feet. Sorry about that. And here's an interesting thing about Twilight Zone the movie. It seems like Twilight Zone the movie has kind of become a footnote in the history of films. And you would think that having the name the Twilight Zone, it would have some kind of recognition. People would bring it up more often and talk about it. But it seems as if people tend to not really talk about Twilight Zone the movie, and I think that's probably because of a couple of things. Just because of the way it was executed, the way it honored the Twilight Zone in that way, and also because of the tragic events that happened during the making of the film. Actually, I should say the one tragic event that happened, but I'll talk about that later. I think Twilight Zone, the movie, suffers from 2 major mistakes. One is whoever came up with the concept to do Twilight Zone, the movie, which is probably some studio head from Warner Brothers, decided that they were going to make a Twilight Zone movie, and they probably thought, well, Twilight Zone, it was a show about making people scared, and so we'll make it just like every other scary film, movie, TV show property that's out right now. And that right there was one major mistake, was making a Twilight Zone film and making it a film that resembled the same kind of sci-fi and horror anthologies of the 1980s. And so missing out on the original presentation of the original series was a big mistake, because there was a certain way that Twilight Zone handled its stories. Like there was a specific kind of story being told. The presentation was unique to that show, and so that was one misstep when making this film. And the second thing was just going ahead and actually not creating any original ideas per se. We end up with a movie that just remakes and retrends on episodes that we already know, episodes that are already remembered and well loved by the public. And I remember reading in the Twilight Zone Companion, it was said by, I think, Joe Dante, who directed the third segment, which was the remake of It's a Good Life, said that that was done because apparently the studio thought if you made something that was familiar to the public, then it would make them want to see the movie even more. But I think in looking back at that idea, I don't think that really gave a lot of magic to the film. So, what about my thoughts of the actual film itself? Well, I think it's there's some interesting things about it. I enjoyed the opening segment, which is probably the most memorable thing in this whole film, with Dan Aykroyd and Albert Brooks driving in their car late at night and actually discussing the Twilight Zone. And I think many people remember that because not because of the way the segment ends, but because of how they're capturing the enthusiasm and love that Dan Aykroyd and Albert Brooks have as fans of the Twilight Zone. I think that's why that sticks out in most people's minds. And then the first segment of the film, which was directed by John Landis, was dealing with a bigot, an American bigot, and it's reminiscent of other Twilight Zone episodes that have come before, but it really didn't have a solid moral at the end. It was pretty dreadful and kind of a pointless morality story. The second segment in the film was Kick the Can, and this was actually directed by Steven Spielberg. And I think it was a good example of that sugary sweet being almost obnoxiously good kind of feel that Spielberg has been kind of been known for by people who have criticized his work. I think that definitely shows up in this, and this was made after E.T., but it kind of misses the point of what the original Kick the Can episode was all about. It's just too much happy-go-lucky Spielberg feelings in this one. So then we go to the third segment, which is It's a Good Life. I would agree with most people and say that this is the second half of the film is when things get interesting. But again, it's more about showing what this new version of Anthony Fremont can do, and just showing how he can create all these crazy visuals and monsters, and just trying to scale the hell out of the characters in the story. But there is one interesting thing about this segment is that there's some actual cameos from the original actors from the Twilight Zone. Bill Mumy is in this. The one actor who played a cop in the episode Mr. Bemis is in this, and the one actress who played Helen in the episode Nightmare as a Child is actually in this too. And funny enough, they called the main character in this segment, well, the other main character, Helen as well. And then we go to the last segment, which is Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. And I would have to say that this is probably the most entertaining segment of the whole film. Great direction from George Miller, and a great performance by John Lithgow. And it's a great suspense thriller. It has the good potential to scare little kids, I'll tell you that. The creature in this new version of Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, a lot more scarier than the original one. So just watch out when little kids watch this. I mean, I still kind of get freaked out when they reveal that face. Anyway, probably the most interesting segment of the whole film, but yet again, it loses the meaning of what the original episode was all about. And I don't think I have to explain myself. Just go watch the original episode and you'll see what I mean. So, all in all, I think that the Twilight Zone movie is really, it's a victim of misinterpreting what the original source material was about. And I also think that I think the reason why the film turned out the way it did was the public's perception of what the Twilight Zone was years later after the original series was on TV. So, yeah, I don't know why people still think that they can remake the Twilight Zone as a film, as a TV show in modern times, and think they can still capture the magic of the original show. I think you have to really sit down and take your time and realize what really made the original Twilight Zone what it was. And with that said, next time we are talk about a very interesting topic. What would happen if someone created a biography picture about Rod Serling's life? Like, what would the ideas be? How would you make that film? How would that story be told? That is a topic I'm going to handle in my next and final video for this trilogy of Twilight Zone videos. So, thank you again for watching, and like always, I will see you later, and take care.